You know what they say about old trappers?
I know what they say about old trappers.
Old trappers never die, they just smell that way.
Yeah, right.
Why would the FBI swarm a remote trapper's cabin in the middle of the night? And why was a concrete truck ordered to pour cement into a hole beneath that same cabin just 48 hours later? The official story is a cover-up, plain and simple, but we have the details. We know about the journals, the sketches of the tall figures, and the metallic object that hums when you touch it. Today, we are breaking the seal on the Tom Oar mystery. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the wild never forgets.
Live in the woods, build a log cabin. What a neat thing to do, you know? It's just stuck with me, I guess. I've done all that, you know. I'm happy with what I've done in life. And I'll be a mountain man until the day I die.
When the Rangers walked in, the Yak Valley is known for being quiet, but the silence surrounding Tom Oar's property on that specific Tuesday was different. It was heavy. It was the kind of silence that hurts your ears. When the local Rangers first arrived, they were expecting a medical emergency, maybe a fall or a bad storm that knocked out the heat. But here's the catch. The scene they walked into was far more unsettling than a simple accident. The snow was knee-deep, totally untouched. That was the first red flag. Tom is a man of routine. He checks his trap lines. He feeds the dogs.
It's a big challenge to be a trapper, really, and all the successes that you might have and all the unsuccessful days you also have. Strange thing to do for trying to make a living.
But his truck was buried under a crust of ice that hadn't been broken in days, and his dogs, usually the best alarm system in Montana, were nowhere to be seen. The front door is where things got weird. Tom Oar is a survivalist. He knows that in the mountains, you lock your door to keep the bears out and the heat in. But the heavy wooden door was unlatched. It was hanging slightly open, swaying just an inch in the freezing wind. As the lead ranger stepped inside, the air in the cabin felt colder than the air outside. The hearth, usually roaring with a fire that hasn't gone out in 40 years, was stone cold. Ash covered the floor. Dust hung in the air like a gray fog. It looked like Tom had just stepped out for a second and never came back. On the table, there was a ceramic mug. Inside, the coffee was frozen solid, a black puck of ice. Beside it lay his favorite handmade knife, gleaming in the dim light. It was positioned perfectly, as if he had just set it down to go answer a knock at the door. But there was no knock, and there were no footprints leaving the cabin. On the wall, the calendar was the only thing that offered a clue. The date, October 3rd, was circled in thick red ink. Beside the calendar, pinned to the wall with a small skinning knife, was a scrap of leather. Scrawled on it were 4 words that would haunt the investigation team. Keep the fire alive.
You just gotta keep looking. I mean, you know they're here, but there's all this country for them to be in, and you just have to be in the right spot at the right time.
The Rangers started to sweep the house. They checked the loft. They checked the supply shed. Nothing. No struggle. No blood. No sign of a break-in. It was as if Tom Oar had simply evaporated into thin air. But then, one of the officers stopped. He held up a hand to silence the group. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. It was faint at first, a low rhythmic thrumming sound. It wasn't coming from the wind outside. It was coming from below them. It sounded like a massive generator running deep underground, or maybe a heartbeat. The officer knelt down. He placed his hand on the rough wooden floorboards near the wood stove. They were warm. While the rest of the cabin was freezing, this specific spot on the floor was vibrating with heat. He pulled back the heavy rug that had covered that corner for decades, and there, cut into the floor, was the outline of a hatch. This hatch was not on any of the property records. It wasn't in the blueprints. It was a secret that Tom had literally kept under the rug, and whatever was humming down there was calling them to open it. The officers looked at each other. They knew they shouldn't touch it, but the curiosity was too strong. They grabbed the iron ring on the hatch door. It was cold to the touch, almost stinging. With a heavy heave, they pulled it open. A rush of stale air blasted into the room. It smelled like ozone, damp earth, and ancient pine resin. And from the darkness below, the humming got louder. They were staring into the abyss. And that's when the flashlights started to flicker. What Tom was hiding. Basically, no one knew this basement existed. Tom Oar has been on television for years. Cameramen have been all over that house. Yet, this hatch had remained a secret the entire time. As the Rangers descended the narrow, creaky wooden stairs, the atmosphere shifted. The air down there was thick. It felt charged, like standing next to a high-voltage power line. The humming sound was vibrating in their chests now. The beam of their flashlights cut through the gloom, revealing a space that looked like a cross between a root cellar and a research lab. The walls were lined with wooden crates, but they weren't filled with potatoes or canned peaches. They were filled with journals, hundreds of them. They were stacked neatly, wrapped in oilcloth to protect them from moisture. Some were bound in leather, others in simple spiral notebooks. The team grabbed the one on top of the nearest stack. The date on the cover read 1972. This was years before Mountain Men ever aired, years before Tom was a household name. One officer opened the book. The handwriting was unmistakably Tom's, neat, meticulous cursive. At first, the entries were normal. Notes about the weather, the migration patterns of elk, the price of fur. But as they flipped through the pages, the tone changed. The writing became jagged, frustrated. An entry from the mid-80s read, "The light came again last night. The dogs are terrified. They tried to dig under the floorboards to hide. I heard it humming through the trees. It's not wind." Another entry, dated a few years later, was even more disturbing. "Voices on the wind. They repeat patterns. It's not English, it's math. They are watching the cabin." The Rangers kept reading, mesmerized and terrified. This wasn't the ramblings of a senile old man. These were scientific observations. Tom had recorded times, barometric pressure drops, and magnetic anomalies. Then they found the sketches. Interspersed between the pages were hand-drawn images. They showed the tree line behind the cabin, but standing among the pines were figures, tall, slender shapes with elongated limbs. In the drawings, the figures had no faces, just shadows where eyes should be. And on every single drawing, there was a symbol, a circle split by a single vertical line. The team realized with a jolt that they had seen that symbol before. It was carved into the trees outside. Locals had always thought it was just a trail marker. Now it looked like a warning. The deeper they went into the cellar, the stranger it got. One journal had a bullet hole clean through the center, as if Tom had tried to shoot the book itself, or something standing directly behind it. In the back corner of the cellar, they found a desk. It was covered in maps of the Yak Valley, but these maps were covered in red lines, connecting specific points in the forest to form a massive geometric shape. The center of that shape? Tom's cabin. It's not that simple, though. The weirdest thing wasn't the journals. It was what was sitting on top of the final diary. It was a folded piece of parchment, sealed with red wax. The wax was still fresh. One of the Rangers picked it up. His hands were shaking. He broke the seal and unfolded the paper. Written in shaky, large letters were the words, "If you are reading this, it is already too late. They are here." Suddenly, the humming sound spiked. It went from a low thrum to a high-pitched whine that made their teeth ache. The flashlight in the Ranger's hand died instantly. Total darkness. In the blackness of that cellar, 3 distinct sounds echoed from the corner of the room. Knock, knock, knock. It was coming from behind the wall. Someone or something was in there with them. The pulse of the yak. The panic was instant. The Rangers scrambled back up the stairs, their boots slipping on the old wood. They burst back into the main cabin, gasping for air. But the cabin had changed. The sunlight outside had dimmed, even though it was midday. The windows seemed darker. And the humming was now coming from everywhere. They needed to document this. They needed proof. One Ranger, a veteran named Mike, pulled out his backup camera. He tried to film the open hatch, but as soon as he hit record, the screen scrambled. Static interference. The battery drained from 100% to 0 in 3 seconds flat. "It's the energy," Mike whispered. "It's draining everything." They had to go back down. They had to know what was making that sound. Armed with flares this time, a smaller team descended again. They ignored the journals. They went straight to the back wall where the knocking had come from. There was a loose board. Behind it, wrapped in a piece of deer hide, was an object. It was about the size of a fist. It looked metallic, but it wasn't like any metal they had ever seen. It was smooth, iridescent, and it seemed to shift colors, from silver to deep violet, depending on how you held it. And it was warm. It pulsed, rhythmically, like a living heart. When the lead ranger reached out to touch it, a spark of blue electricity jumped from the object to his glove. He recoiled, but the object didn't stop. It began to hover, just an inch off the wooden shelf. This is the crazy part. The object wasn't just floating, it was reacting to them. When they moved closer, the humming got louder. When they backed away, it softened. It was aware. Tom Oar hadn't just found a cool rock. He had found a piece of technology, or biology, that didn't belong on this earth. Suddenly, the floorboards above them creaked. Heavy footsteps. The rangers froze. They were supposed to be the only ones on the property. The footsteps were slow, deliberate. Thump, thump, thump. They were walking right toward the open hatch. "Sheriff?" Mike called out, thinking it was backup. No answer. Just the heavy breathing of the house settling, or something else breathing into the house. Then, the light from the object flared. A blinding blue flash filled the cellar. For a split second, the rangers saw shadows projected onto the walls, but the shadows weren't human. They were tall, too tall, and they had that same symbol, the circle and the line, etched into their silhouettes. The men scrambled out of the hole, sealing the hatch behind them and dragging the heavy rug back over it. They ran out of the cabin, jumping into their trucks. As they sped away, Mike looked back in the rearview mirror. Hovering above the cabin, just above the chimney where the smoke used to be, was a faint, orange orb. It watched them leave. They drove straight to the station to report what they found. They thought they would be heroes. They thought they would solve the mystery of the century. But they were wrong. They had just triggered a protocol they didn't even know existed. And the response was fast, erasing the evidence. By sunrise the next morning, the Yak Valley didn't look like Montana anymore. It looked like a scene straight out of a sci-fi movie. Residents woke up to the deafening sound of heavy rotors as unmarked, blacked-out helicopters circled the Oar property. Then came the convoy. Dozens of black SUVs with government plates rolled through the dirt roads, refusing to stop for locals or even wave. They drove straight to Tom's cabin and set up a hard perimeter. Neighbors who tried to get close were turned away by men in tactical gear holding assault rifles. The only explanation they offered was a curt, national security. From a distance, locals watched through binoculars as men in full hazmat suits entered the cabin. They weren't carrying medical bags. They were carrying lead-lined boxes. They spent hours inside, finally emerging with the same crates the rangers had seen in the cellar, the journals, the maps, and that strange metallic shard. Everything was loaded into the back of armored trucks. But the most chilling part happened on the second day. A cement mixer truck struggled up the snowy driveway and backed up to the side of the house. The agents ran a chute through the front door, but they weren't fixing the foundation. They were filling the cellar. They poured yards of wet concrete down that hatch, sealing the journals, the history, and whatever else was hiding down there, forever. Tom Oar's life work was being buried. When the operation was done, the agents left as quickly as they came, leaving behind nothing but a no trespassing sign and a locked gate.
You know, I don't go into the deep, dark, awful, scary stuff. That's private, and it's not for the public to know about. That wasn't easy to do. So I try to give illustrations of some of his harder sides, more abusive sides, more volatile sides.
Everyone has a place where they hide things they don't want the world to see. For Atz Kilcher, his private life was that place. He fought tooth and nail to keep outsiders away, but eventually, the walls came down.
This place where he was going to do an experiment. He was going to get people together. And my mom also shared that same dream. They were going to raise kids and kind of let them run wild and let them be creative. And so for my dad, that homestead meant a lot more than just a piece of land.
It wasn't just about a divorce or a broken bone. It was about a systematic breakdown of his entire world. Investigators found proof of illegal activities that stained his reputation forever. The craziest part is how long he managed to keep it a secret. But now, the contents of his hidden life are on full display. The physical collapse. For years, Atz was the image of strength. He was the guy who could climb any mountain, hunt any animal, and build a house with his bare hands. He seemed invincible. But that image was crushed in a single afternoon at Otter Cove. This was not part of the script. This was real life, and it was terrifying.
One of the many important lessons of my youth was to take advantage of unforeseen opportunities, to trust that a less worn, more difficult path would indeed take you to the place you needed to go.
Atz was out hiking with a friend, just enjoying the rugged terrain he loved so much. But gravity is a cruel mistress. In a split second, Atz lost his footing. He fell off a cliff edge. This was not a small stumble. He plummeted nearly 40 feet down. To put that in perspective, that is like falling off a 4-story building. The impact was devastating. His body smashed against the rocks below. Most people would not have survived a fall like that. It is a miracle he did not lose his life instantly upon impact. But the damage was done. Atz was broken. Literally. He suffered a punctured lung, which meant every breath was a struggle for survival. He broke his ribs, his hips, and his ankles. He was lying there, battered and unable to move, in the middle of nowhere. If he had been alone, that would have been the end of the story. But luck was on his side that day. His friend Mark was there and had a satellite phone. The rescue was intense. A helicopter had to be called in to airlift him out of the danger zone. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, but the road to recovery was going to be a nightmare. Atz later shared photos from his hospital bed, looking nothing like the strong homesteader we see on TV. He was hooked up to machines, looking frail and humbled. He admitted that this accident changed him. It forced him to slow down. He could not build, he could not hunt, and he could not film. For a man who defines himself by what he can do, this was a crushing blow to his spirit. He became withdrawn. He stopped posting as much. He went into a dark place mentally because his body just would not cooperate. And getting back on his feet took a long time. We are talking about a year of grueling recovery just to walk properly again. But while he was healing, anger started to build up. Atz felt that the resort at Otter Cove was to blame. He claimed there were no warning signs near the cliff, so he decided to sue them for $100,000. This sparked a massive legal war. The resort fought back hard. They claimed Atz was the one being careless. They said a man of his experience should have known better. It got ugly fast. Public opinion started to split. Some felt bad for him, while others thought he was just looking for a payout. But this lawsuit was just the tip of the iceberg. While he was fighting this battle, another legal storm was brewing that would expose a massive secret. The investigation into his activities was just beginning. Justice comes knocking. So, here is the deal. While Atz was dealing with his broken bones, the authorities were looking into something else entirely. This is where things get really messy. You see, Alaska has very strict laws about hunting. They take wildlife protection very seriously. One of the biggest rules is about fair chase. This means you cannot use unfair advantages to hunt animals. But reports started circulating that Atz and the production crew had crossed a line, a serious line. It involved a black bear and a helicopter. In Alaska, it is highly illegal to use a helicopter to spot, track, or transport hunters to a location for a hunt. You cannot just fly in, take down an animal, and fly out. That is not hunting, that is just shooting. The crazy part is how they got caught. It wasn't a ranger stumbling upon them, it was an inside job. A whistleblower from the production crew decided they could not stay silent anymore. This person had been hired as a medic for the show, but quit after realizing what they were planning to do. This medic went straight to the Alaska State Troopers and spilled the beans. The investigation was swift. Troopers pulled the flight logs. They interviewed the helicopter company. The company confirmed that, yes, they had flown Atz and the crew to Bradley Lake. But the pilot claimed he didn't know they were planning to hunt. He thought it was just a transport flight, but the evidence was piling up. When the episode finally aired, it showed Atz aiming at a black bear. The editing made it look like a rugged adventure, but the authorities knew the truth behind the scenes. They charged Atz with using an aircraft for hunting purposes. They also charged the production company, Wilma TV, with a misdemeanor for unlawful methods. Atz tried to defend himself. In court, his lawyer argued that because they didn't actually harvest the bear, meaning they didn't successfully take its life, it wasn't technically a crime. They tried to say he was just scouting, but the judge was not buying it. The intent was there. The helicopter was used to access a remote area specifically to find game. What most people don't realize is that reality TV is often fake, but the laws they break are very real. The judge handed down a sentence. Atz had to pay a fine of $1,500. It might not sound like a lot for a TV star, but the damage to his reputation was priceless. The production company got hit much harder with a fine of over $17,000. This scandal revealed a side of Atz that fans didn't want to believe. It showed a disregard for the very laws that protect the wilderness he claims to love. It made people wonder what else was fake on the show. If they would cheat on a hunt, what else were they lying about? The barn door was open and the secrets were flying out. Atz went quiet again. He disappeared from social media. The shame of the public conviction weighed heavy on him. He had gone from a hero to a man convicted of a wildlife crime. But the drama did not stop at the courthouse steps. The stress of these events was leaking into his home life, creating cracks in his family that would eventually shatter everything. His family was about to face their own public nightmare. The end of a homestead era. It is not that simple to keep a marriage together when your entire life is being filmed, packaged, and sold to millions of people. A.T. Lee and his wife Jane seemed like the perfect team. They were the poster couple for the rugged Alaskan dream. Jane was tough, tougher than most men you will ever meet. She was a commercial fisherwoman, an expert hunter, and she could handle the rough, freezing lifestyle just as well as any kilcher born on that land. They had been married for 17 years. To the outside world, they were a solid, unbreakable unit fighting against the elements. But behind the scenes, the pressure was boiling over. The legal battles, the bad press, and the constant, intrusive presence of camera crews were taking a toll that no one saw coming. Then, the rumors started.
My name's Jane Kilcher, and I'm working with Emily Rydell on her dredge up in Nome. I love being on the dredge, and we're getting gold. Definitely have a gold fever. People probably know me best from Alaska Last Frontier.
And we aren't just talking about small-town gossip. People began whispering that Atz was not the faithful husband everyone thought he was. While the cameras showed a devoted partner, the internet forums were lighting up with theories that Atz had a wandering eye. Jane eventually hinted at this pain in later interviews, though she never explicitly dropped names. She spoke about betrayal and the deep, stinging hurt she carried for years. But here is a wild theory that gained traction online. Some fans believe the infidelity wasn't just with another person, it was with the show itself. The theory goes that Atz became so obsessed with his own persona, his own storyline of being the adventurous provider, that he completely emotionally abandoned his wife. He was married to the fame, and Jane was just a supporting character in his movie. And get this, while all this emotional warfare was happening, they were fighting a literal war to protect their children. A lot of casual fans did not even know Jane and Atz had children together named Etienne and Piper. They appeared in one early episode, caught in the background, and then, poof, they vanished. People started asking questions. Where were the kids? Why were they erased from the narrative? Some internet trolls in the darkest corners of the web even spread horrible, baseless rumors that the kids had passed away or were being held in some sort of custody limbo. This made Atz furious. He and Jane had made a conscious choice to hide their kids to protect them from the toxicity of fame. Jane had to take to Facebook to shut down the haters. She explained that they wanted their kids to have a normal life, away from the cameras and the judgment. She was a lioness protecting her cubs. But let's look at the darker theory here. Some insiders speculate that the disappearance of the children wasn't just about protection, it was about control. There is a theory that the production network wanted to own the rights to the children's images in perpetuity, essentially signing their lives away before they were even teenagers. The rumor is that Jane refused to sign those contracts, leading to a massive standoff with the producers. Did the network threaten to cut their pay? Did they try to manipulate the edit to make Jane look difficult because she wouldn't serve up her kids for ratings? It makes you look at those missing years differently. It wasn't just privacy, it was a blockade. Even that shared goal of protecting the children could not save the marriage. The announcement came out of nowhere for the fans. Atz and Jane were getting a divorce. It was the final nail in the coffin of the life they had built. Jane admitted that while they loved the homestead, the differences between them had become too great. She mentioned the strain of Atz's legal issues, specifically the helicopter hunting scandal, and how his behavior during that time had pushed them apart. Here is where the theories get really wild. We know Atz was charged for using a helicopter to hunt, which is a big no-no in Alaska. But some conspiracy theorists believe he was set up. Think about it. Reality TV needs drama. It needs stakes. Did a producer encourage him to take that helicopter? Did someone in the crew say, "It'll be fine, we need the shot," only to hang him out to dry when the law got involved? Some believe the stress of that conviction broke Atz. He wasn't just fighting the law, He was fighting the realization that the show he loved might have trapped him. Jane, being a nurse and a grounded person, likely saw through the charade. She stood by him publicly, but privately. The resentment must have been suffocating. There is also the cabin fever theory. Living in isolation is hard. Living in isolation with a film crew of 20 people watching you eat breakfast is impossible. Some suggest that the network actually encouraged conflict between Atz and Jane. Did producers whisper things to Atz to make him jealous? Did they edit conversations to make Jane seem nagging, just to get a reaction out of Atz? It is a common tactic in reality TV, and after 17 years, psychological manipulation like that can crack even the strongest foundation. Eventually, Jane decided to focus on herself. She went back to her roots, working as a nurse and spending time fishing, doing the things she loved before the cameras took over. She made it clear she was moving on. Atz was left alone in the house he had built. The imagery is haunting. He was surrounded by the memories of a family that was now fractured. The divorce proceedings were kept mostly private, but the sadness was visible in Atz's eyes in the later seasons. He looked like a man who had won the war for ratings, but lost the war for his soul. The crazy part is how fast it all unraveled. In just a few short years, Atz went from being the respected patriarch, the strong, capable hunter, to a man battling physical disability, legal convictions, and a broken marriage. So, was the reality show fame worth losing his privacy and reputation? Atz's culture is still standing, but he is standing alone in the wreckage of his past choices. What do you think? Did he deserve the backlash? Or was he just a victim of strict laws? Let us know below. Like and subscribe for more truth.